Welcome to Estate Planning Nightmares and How to Avoid Them. I'm your host, Jon Braddock, the author of Click Here When I Die, and the founder of My Life and Wishes, a legacy vault, an online planning and document storage solution created to make things easier for those you love. Hey, today I have an incredible guest, Roberto L. Seda, a seasoned probate and estate planning attorney in Oklahoma. Let me give you a little background on Roberto. He leads a location estate planning and probate firm in Oklahoma. He took a non-traditional journey to become an attorney. He attended the University of Oklahoma College of Law after holding management positions for 8 years with General Motors, as well as Spirit AeroSystems. In addition to his law degree, he has his bachelor's of science in mechanical engineering from Oklahoma State University and a master's in business administration from Oklahoma City University. Roberto serves as board of director for numerous organizations. When he's not practicing probate and estate planning law, Roberto serves as a deacon at Central Church of Christ in Moore, Oklahoma. And he certainly enjoys traveling with his lovely wife, Becky, and their 3 children, Alex, Landon, and Cole. Welcome, Roberto.
Hey, John, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. How are things out your way?
Although a little bit cold right now, I think we may get some freezing temps. And so in Oklahoma, we don't really get snow, we get ice. So I'm curious to see if my car is going to be ice skating in the morning.
Well, yeah, a lot of people don't know this, but I actually lived for 2 years in Tulsa, and I remember a few times where we had the black ice, where I couldn't get my car up the hill to the apartment that I lived in at the time, which this was a long time ago, maybe before you were born. But yeah, the uh, the ice storms are wicked down that way.
They really are. And my problem is that I recently bought a car about a year ago, and it is rear wheel drive, and this will be the last time I make that mistake. It's all wheel drive from now on anything that I buy.
They make a Lamborghini with rear wheel drive or all wheel drive.
I wish I'm not that bougie quite yet.
Oh
But
gosh,
yeah.
I hear you. Well, awesome. Well, say, your journey to becoming an attorney sounds fascinating to me. I mean, you had an established career in management at GM and Spirit AeroSystems before stepping into the legal world. So, what inspired you to make that kind of a transition?
It really is interesting, and part of the reason had GM not closed their plant down here in Oklahoma City, I probably would have never left General Motors. I love putting together vehicles and being in management, but they closed the plant, and my wife didn't want to move any farther north, and I didn't want to move any farther north. Oklahoma's as cold as I wanted to get, so went to Spirit in Tulsa and worked in management there. But I think if you grow up in that world, I mean, you're working, you're at the plant at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it may be 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night before you get to leave. So that was the norm. And I still remember the day where we were getting ready, my wife and I, Becky, and she was telling me a story of like that our kid had come that morning into our room and was laughing at the foot of our bed. And when I asked her why, she says, "Well," and she says, "I asked him that, and he says, well, Daddy's sleeping in your bed." Well, my kid had never actually seen me sleep in my bed because when he went to bed, I was awake, and when he woke up, I was not at home. And so she turned to me and she says, they're going to remember this someday. So that really was a punch in the gut. So I started realizing that I needed to make a change and figuring out, okay, what kind of career can I have that would give me a bunch of flexibility? And I do give credit to my father-in-law, who is an attorney. I was like, well, he's able to move meetings around and come up to, at that time we were up in Tulsa, and come to Tulsa if we needed him. And not realizing that by that time he was a partner at his firm for 20 years. So I mean, he had earned that right to have that flexibility. And so I was a little naive from that standpoint, but you know, fast forward, I decided I want to go back to law school, and my wife was anti that move. She did not want me to change careers. But I went to law school thinking I was going to be a patent engineer or a patent attorney, right? Because of my engineering degree, and took the patent bar, even passed the patent bar, never really got into any doing any IP work. And we're an oil and gas rich state here in Oklahoma. I render a lot of title opinions, which work well with my engineering brain. Loved it. And in 19 decided I was going to start my own law firm. And really thinking it was going to be in the title world, in the oil and gas title world. I was a chairperson for a statewide committee for about 5 years here in the state of Oklahoma. I finally stepped down from that one last year. But my involvement in rendering title opinions and if in Oklahoma, mineral interest is considered real property, and real property has to go through probate in Oklahoma. And I was putting opinions together that were, zero point zero 0.01 of a net mineral acre in a 640 acre section, and requiring a probate. And that's when I realized that maybe oil and gas was, and around that time COVID happened, and then we had a slowdown in oil and gas, and decided maybe it was a time to make a change. And so that's kind of my journey all the way from manufacturing kind of into the law, and how I got started in probate initially, and eventually into estate planning.
Ah, interesting. Interesting. Yeah, because I always love to talk about how people make their transition. You're the logical step. I speak with some people, and when they were in college with not a clue what they wanted to do, and all of a sudden they lose a grandparent or a parent or something, and they see the nightmare that progresses
Hmm.
after that, and they say, "Oh man, I don't want this to happen to other people." But yeah, I mean, as you know, I mean, I love estate planning attorneys. If I were to ever do anything else again, but I'm too old to change careers and go study and sit for a bar exam, but it would be estate planning without a doubt.
No, I agree. And talking about estate planning, I had a signing this morning, and I sat down with a couple, and I mean, they've got about $1 million in the bank account right now. And really sitting down and say, what does success look for like for you? Right? You've got three kids. They're disinheriting a couple of them and leaving everything to one. And they really, and I keep telling them, it's like you need to write your kid a letter that's going to be delivered 20 years from now, saying, I hope that you understand that what a blessing we are giving you, right? But as we're doing that, we're saying, well, what if he passes away? And they want to leave some money for the wife's mom, and saying, okay, what does that look like? What do you want the rentals? Who's going to manage them? And really sitting down and playing out a lot of some different scenarios, I think is fascinating. And I told him, I said, this is the stuff that you're not going to get online. You're not going to get by going and filling out some form online and just having the interaction between the attorney and the clients, really trying to flush everything out. And it's fascinating. I love it.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I've had several guests on the show. We've talked about DIY nightmares, and people always say, "Well, yeah, I was at Costco today, and when you go to Costco, you always spend too much money, but I bought one of these do-it-yourself will kits." Yeah, there's no do-it-yourself will kit or an online program that
Mhm.
can ask you the right questions to really think about and get to the root of what it is you really want to have happen. And if this, what about this? And if not that, what about that? Stuff doesn't do that. We're working with a seasoned estate planning professional who's seen all the nightmares and probates and other things and bad things that can happen. There's, you know, you're not saving money by doing it yourself. That's for sure. At the end of
No,
the
I,
day.
I agree. And even as attorneys, we have to be willing to ask difficult questions, right?
Hmm.
Do the kids get along? Do they not? Is there substance abuse? Are there credit issues? Are there divorces that may be rocky? And really trying to dig deep. And sometimes you just pick up on little cues when you're meeting with people that I think help guide the conversation to make sure that that estate plan is fully flushed out.
Yeah, absolutely. And the hard decisions to make, which is why you need, an attorney to guide you. It's, if you have three kids and you're just thinking, well, it's going to be pretty easy. I'm just going to, you know, divide it all up and leave a third, a third, a third to the kids. But if one of those kids is a habitual drug addict with challenges, and the other is bankrupt three times, you know, you need a different strategy
Yeah.
with than leaving money to kids that may wither away their inheritance and your legacy. But and that's the thing. As I often say, estate planning isn't just about the documents itself; it's about protecting families and their legacies. But speaking of that, it wouldn't be called estate planning nightmares if we didn't share some stories. So um, I know you've got a lot, and we don't have that much time. But if you could share one or two uh, nightmares or stories with us that would help people really understand more of the importance of getting things put into place, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Um, Definitely. I've got two estate planning nightmares, I guess, from the lack of planning because nothing was done, right? And I think that it's important to people, and even this afternoon I had a consult, and I really they were trying to figure out, is a trust really what I need to do? And I always say, well, if you were to die today, would your estate go through probate? That to me, right? They're not millionaires. They don't, they don't have a ton of rentals or anything like that. I mean, very modest. And just like most of my clients, right? Probably in the three to $500,000 net worth. I mean, they were about half a mil. And I said, but if you die today, what's the plan? Are you going through probate? And they would, right? And for here in Oklahoma, for their size of state, even at half a mil, you're starting my initial retainer is 5 grand because in my experience it costs 4,500 to 5,000 for an uncontested probate. So I said I definitely would advise doing a trust. But what I told them is, I've had nightmare probates where, I kid you not, I had one a couple of years ago. Mom passed away and daughter was living with her. No will. And the only thing that ended up going through the house or going through the probate was the home. Brother came to us and sister, both of them, and he was convinced he wanted to use us. She was not, but I did a consult with both. At the very end, he's like, "Well, he turns to his sister, do you want to use this guy?" And she's like, "Sure." Kid you not, we start the paperwork to open up the probate. All there is the home. About 2 weeks in, she's like, "I don't want to do it," and now it's contested. Well, fast forward a year, and the home, which was 175, I think net proceeds were 160. That's all that's being distributed. All right. So I want you to remember 160 is all that's in the estate. When all was said and done, because of the fighting, because we had to force the sale of the home, we had to evict the sister out of the house. She hired her own attorney. I think our attorney's fees ended up being about 25,000. She ended up spending about 20 grand on her attorney for a total of about 45 grand in attorney's fees and out of $160,000 estate. So, almost 45% of the estate was eaten up because of administration fees. And that to me as an engineer going back, I said, that's just not efficient. That's not efficient because they didn't get along. And so that to me, that really killed me. That we couldn't give them more money just because they couldn't get along.
Wow. It's funny. um, Michelle and I have 6 children between us, and as I always say, um, you know, they could never agree on what to have for dinner or what movie we are going to see, and those kind of things, right? And and his siblings they fought and did that kind of stuff. And if we naively think that when we are gone, if they couldn't agree on what movie to go to or what to have for dinner, you think they're going to agree on what should
Right.
happen with the house or the money?
Hmm.
And if they fought when they're young, they're going to fight when they're older because this is the biggest fight of their life, right?
Yeah. And oftentimes we don't know because I mean I've had probates here where family members have sat down. They're like, well, there's four of us and three are only sitting here because the fourth one has kind of gone off the deep end. And everyone handles the grieving process differently. And you don't know how someone's going to react to death until they actually go through it, right? And not that it's right or wrong the way that they're grieving, but we truly don't know. And there are some probates that probably could have saved a ton of money if everyone got along and they were expecting it, right? I guess mom was like, "Well, when I die, I expect you guys to get along to probate this as efficiently and as cheaply as possible," and doesn't end up being that way.
Yeah, it's interesting. I hear from a lot of people that, don't understand whatever. They think mom and dad passes, whatever, I'm going to get some inheritance. It's going to be fairly quick, whatever. Well, if there's not, yeah, if there's not probate, yeah, it will be
Hmm.
fairly quick. But what they don't understand is if things have to go through probate. So this case took, well over a year before any assets could be distributed, right? So
Yeah.
in Oklahoma, what would be the normal time to get through an uncontested probate?
Hmm.
And then, obviously contested can be years.
Yeah. So a regular probate in Oklahoma, if it's uncontested, I tell, clients to expect about 6 to 9 months. All right. And generally we can hit those markers pretty easily unless there's some reason to keep it open or if some creditors pop up or something like that. But a straightforward probate in Oklahoma, it's about 6 to 9 months for a regular one. Um, and we do have a shorter procedure. Um, it's called a summary administration. And those you have to meet certain qualifications. The qualifications are if it's under 200,000, or if the decedent has been deceased for more than 5 years, or if they're out of state. If it hits one of those qualifiers, we could actually potentially do the summary. And the benefit for that is that it is 2 months generally from when we file our petition. So, if we were filing here today, we would be looking to have a final hearing 2 months from today, basically. It's 45 days, but I generally say, hey, we don't want to mess with the publishing requirements or anything like that. So we're usually hitting about 2 months. But in that case, if it's intestate, you do have to have consent from everyone, all the intestate heirs. All right. So if the kids don't get along, that may not be an option. If there's a will involved, then we're generally okay for that. But so there's a couple of options, and when we sit down with people, we want to give them, what those options are. So it's either 2 months for a summary or 6 to 9 months if it's contested. Obviously, that shorter one's not available, and it could be years for a regular probate if it's contested.
Yeah. Okay. There's a lesson. We don't want to go to probate anyway.
No,
so,
no.
uh,
I
wait, you
did
were
have a
telling me,
second one real quick,
yeah, I
if
was
you
going to
don't
say,
let me.
you were telling me earlier that you had another story that's kind of
Yeah.
blow my mind. So I'm
Yeah,
stoked.
it is. So I got contacted several years ago by a family member about a probate that had been opened by a creditor and of the deceased. And we got involved. And essentially, what happened was the deceased was befriended by the daughter of a friend. The deceased was in her 80s, so that her friend's daughter had befriended her, executed what we found to be an invalid power of attorney, got herself added to a bank account, and just drained a bunch of money. Well, then the decedent passed, and she was trying to get some money, some stuff reimbursed. We don't know why. I forget those specifics, but I think what was interesting is that that attorney, in fact, actually executed three deeds after the principal passed. And so and within the probate, we had to like basically try to get that interest brought back into the probate. So obviously that's going to cost some money. But I think that, and what I had mentioned to you and kind of teased you with is the decedent had no kids, no parents, no siblings. It basically within the Oklahoma statutes, we had to go to the very last paragraph on determining heirs. And when all said and done, at the very end, the court determined 65 heirs in this matter. So we literally, I mean, when we had the family tree, we had so many pages that we had 8.5 by 11s that we had to stable together. And we spread this thing along the office floor just to get a picture. But it was literally at the end got split 65 ways. Now you're still talking about 600,000 that ended up getting split. But you could imagine trying to making sure we got notice to everyone in that instance. It was just it was phenomenal. Now, through the fighting back and forth and everything, I think court costs, attorney's fees ended up being about 85 to $90,000 in that probate. And then what was left over was split 65 ways. But just the sheer number, right? Because of a lack of planning. And people are like, oh, it's going to go to the state, you know, and I'm like, no, there's an heir. We just have to figure out where that person is. But 65.
Wow. So no spouse, no kids, no siblings, anything. So so you're looking to cousins, nieces,
Second,
nephews,
third
second,
cousins.
third cousins,
Yes.
fourth
Yeah.
cousins, and all those become an heir, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And that's why I mean it had she done a trust or even a will, just some sort of estate planning, right? She could have said, I'm leaving everything through to this charitable organization. And so that that was phenomenal. It blew my mind. And you know, when I sit down with people, they're like, well, I've got no family. I was just like, well, there is family. Someone's gonna get it. We just need to find them.
Yeah. So spend 59.95 and open an ancestry account and start digging, and you're going to find out that there's a
Yep.
lot of errors out there.
Yep.
Now, do
Yep.
you want someone that never even heard of you to get paid something, or would you rather leave it to the the homeless children foundation?
Yeah. Well, it's my
Uh,
understanding that half of the heirs were represented by one law firm that took it on contingency. I could only imagine what that contingency was, right? And so um, I didn't see it all the way through. We transferred the file about halfway through the matter. I mean, when it left my firm, I mean, it was 45, $50,000 in attorney's fees. It was crazy the amount of money that we spent on that thing.
Unbelievable. And yet something that, a will, preferably a trust, but either one, could have
Mhm.
at least dealt with.
Right. And, you know, one of the interesting things is, you know, that person could have sat down and says, well, I don't have any family. And I think as estate planning attorneys, especially those that have been around for a long time and you know, want to provide, want to show our value add, right? I think that there's always a question as to what value add do estate planning attorneys have. sitting down with her and saying, well, here are some options. Here, I can give you all these charitable organizations that I know representatives that would, if you left them money, could do some good with it, right? Or, for example, I've got a client right now, here in the Oklahoma City area. They've got about 3 million in assets. They've got 3 kids, and they're not going to leave their 3 kids anything, right? The kids haven't seen their kids in at least 17 years. And
Oh,
so what they've chosen to do is to leave it to charity when they pass away. And I'm like, all right, good. And they're like, but we need help with successor trustees. Well, guess what? I've got someone for you. We don't know who to name as power of attorney. Well, lo and behold, I know someone that's what they do. They will be your healthcare attorney. In fact, they'll be your financial attorney. In fact, and having those conversations and knowing where I can plug other services, other businesses that that we vetted out. And I think that's another benefit is that they're going to get people that we vetted out that we feel comfortable in recommending. So I think that, people always look at us and say, well, I can just go online. And I was like, you're not going to get the same service. We're not, they're not going to look out for you like we do.
oh, absolutely not. And it's interesting. Yeah. I mean, for the listener, I mean, if you've got some assets and you don't want to leave them to your children, you serious heck
Yeah.
better get yourself an estate planning attorney, because without having an estate plan in place, the kids you don't want to inherit your money will inherit
Yep.
your money.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
wow, that
Exactly.
is so interesting. So let me ask you this question. We've talked about that. I love the stories. The whole idea here is to get people to hear various stories and say, "Oh, how could that relate in my life?" And then reach out, right, to at least speak to an estate planning attorney in the area. Um, any last words or closing advice that you'd offer people who are maybe just starting their estate planning journey or thinking about it?
Yeah, I think that sitting down and just having an open, honest discussion, right? What's the benefit in putting something together, right? I often get people who are like, this has been on my mind for so long, and I know I need to get something done. But sitting down and showing, okay, you have 500,000, your probate, is going to be 5,000 for that your family's going to have to pay if you don't do something, or even guardianship, right? That's the other piece that most people don't think about when it comes to estate planning is, are your powers of attorney in place? And, that alone in Oklahoma is about 3 grand, and so avoiding that. But for me, I just like to sit down and I feel like I'm an educator. I just want to educate. Here's the information. I'd love to help you, but at the end of the day, I feel like if I've provided the information and you choose not to, um, it that's on them. That's on the potential client. I feel like I can lay my head down at night and say I gave it my all. Part of me does, feel like I'm a failure because I couldn't help show them the value in getting an estate plan done, but at least I know I did my best. And, for us right now, our firm does not charge for consults. So why not take that free 30 minutes to sit down? Let's go over your questionnaire that you fill out beforehand and saying specifically, yeah, you're a good candidate for that. And so I think that just having that sit down conversation is huge.
Yeah, I love the fact that you do that. So many, others will do that. Is that no obligation consultation. Let's
Mhm.
find out. I mean, the starting point is if you're not sure if you should have an estate plan or not, well, you should. We'll just
Mhm.
say you should. But if you're not sure, is it going to be too expensive for me, or what do I need to have in it, or why is this important? Go spend 30 minutes. Talk
Yeah.
with Roberto. um, find out if you're listening to this and you're not in the greater Oklahoma City area or in the state of Oklahoma or wherever. else Roberto practices, he knows attorneys all across the country. So
Mhm.
and like minds, think alike and do things, and he can certainly refer you to someone maybe in your state that you could reach out to. So I love it. It's very wise words, Roberto. It's been a fantastic conversation. I always enjoy connecting with you, getting together and
Yeah.
talking. And how can our listeners reach you if they do have questions?
Yeah, so it's the easiest way is just give us a call, right? I've got staff that answers the phones, whether, during the day or even after business hours, we'll get those messages. But, our office number here in Oklahoma is 405-759-0678. Or they're welcome to shoot me an email, rseda, so rseda at Seda Law Firm .com, and normally when I get people reaching out, I'll forward it to my staff who then takes care of it. It's good to have staff that kind of can help you make sure that we don't lose people, because we definitely, if we can't help people, we want to connect them with the right people, and so we're huge there. But those are the best ways, is through those channels.
I love that. I love that. And to make it easier for our listeners and viewers, I have included all of Roberto's contact information below in the show note. Um, thank you, Roberto. Thank you to our listeners. If you found this episode helpful, don't forget to subscribe, give it a thumbs up, leave us a review, and certainly share it with someone that needs to hear it. So until next time, remember, your life is your legacy. So plan ahead and make it a great day.